The blue and red lights of 3 patrol cars painted the desert evening in colors that did not belong there. I stood on the porch of a house I had owned for exactly 11 days, watching a woman in a light blue suit point her manicured finger at my chest like it was a weapon she had been waiting her whole life to fire. "Officer, I want him removed." Her voice carried that particular frequency reserved for people who had never been told no. "He is unauthorized, he is dangerous, and that recording is illegal wiretapping. Arrest him, now!" The deputy had his hand hovering near his holster. 2 other officers flanked him, their body language tight with the tension of a situation they did not fully understand. Behind Meredith Vane, her personal compliance officer stood with his arms crossed, a smirk carved into his face like he was watching the final scene of a movie where the villain wins. But I did not argue. I did not raise my voice. I simply reached into my pocket, pulled out a ruggedized military tablet, and touched the screen once. A voice filled the silence between us, crystal clear despite the desert wind. It was Meredith's voice, and it was confessing to a federal crime. The smile on her face did not fade gradually. It shattered. One moment she was the queen of Heritage Hills, commanding law enforcement like her personal security detail. The next moment, she was staring at a piece of technology that had just ended her entire world. She thought calling 911 was her checkmate move. She did not know she was playing chess against someone whose ears had been valued at $2 million by the United States government. Most people move to the edge of town seeking peace. I moved there because the U.S. Marshals were liquidating a seized property that no one else wanted to touch, and I needed absolute silence for my work. What I got instead was a war I never asked for, fought with frequencies instead of fists, recordings instead of rifles. This battle over a few acres of dust turned into a federal case faster than I could unpack my coffee mugs. I am curious, where are you tuning in from today? Drop your country or state in the comments. I want to see how far this story travels. But to understand how I ended up with handcuffs clicking around my wrists, while a woman in designer heels planted evidence in my flower bed, we need to go back. Back to the day I first set foot on property that was supposed to be my sanctuary. 14 days earlier, I pulled my truck down a gravel road that Google Maps had given up on 3 miles back. The desert stretched around me in every direction, all rust-colored rock and stubborn mesquite trees that had learned to survive on nothing but spite and occasional rain. The house appeared over a ridge like something from another era, a 2-story structure built from timber and stone, solar panels on the roof, a well house out back, completely off the grid. My name is Thorne, just Thorne. The kind of single name that comes from spending 15 years in government work, where your full identity is classified above the pay grade of most senators. I was 38 years old, recently retired from a position where I could not discuss, and carrying enough settlement money to buy 3 of these properties. But I only needed one. One place where the only sounds would be wind through the canyon and the hum of my equipment. I spent the first day unloading, not boxes of clothes or kitchen supplies. Those came later, almost as an afterthought. What came first were the Pelican cases, black and heavy, each one containing equipment that most people would not recognize if they saw it. Parabolic microphones that could pick up a whisper from a quarter-mile away. Window-mounted vibration sensors that turned any pane of glass into a surveillance detection system. A server rack that I installed in the basement, its fans humming at a frequency precisely calibrated to create white noise that would mask any electronic signature. I was setting up my spectral analyzer when I heard the crunch of tires on gravel. Not the soft approach of a curious neighbor. This was aggressive, deliberate. The sound of someone who believed they owned everything their headlights touched. I walked to the window and saw a black Mercedes SUV, not parked on the road, parked on my property, its front tires crushing the wild grass that had been growing undisturbed for months. The woman who stepped out was approximately 50 years old, with silver blonde hair styled in a way that probably cost more than my monthly food budget. She wore a light blue suit that seemed wildly impractical for the desert heat, the kind of outfit chosen specifically to communicate power rather than comfort. In her hand, she carried a tablet computer like a scepter. I opened my front door and stepped onto the porch. "Can I help you?" She looked at me the way someone might look at a stain on their carpet. A problem to be removed, not a person to be addressed. "Your moving truck is blocking the visual corridor. That antenna array on your roof is a residential violation. Heritage Hills Homeowners Association, Article 4, Section 9. She said it like she was reading a death sentence. I leaned against my door frame. Heritage Hills is 3 miles east of here. This property is unincorporated county land. It has been since it was built in 1972. Her smile was thin and cold and practiced, the kind of smile that came from years of getting exactly what she wanted through sheer force of will and legal intimidation. "The boundary line was adjusted 3 years ago," she said smoothly. "This parcel was annexed under the Abandoned Property Integration Act after the previous owner was incarcerated. You did not purchase a private sanctuary, Mr." She glanced at her tablet. "Thorne, you purchased the newest project in my development portfolio." She extended her hand, not for a handshake, but to present me with a folded piece of paper. I took it, unfolded it, read it twice. It was a violation notice. $5,000. Not for the moving truck, for unauthorized commercial equipment. She had somehow identified my antenna array as something other than standard television reception hardware. "How did you know what those antennas were for?" Her smile widened, but her eyes stayed frozen. "Heritage Hills takes security very seriously. We monitor all unusual installations." She turned and walked back to her SUV without waiting for a response. The vehicle pulled away, leaving tire tracks across my property like a signature of ownership she was determined to enforce. I stood there for a long moment, holding that violation notice, feeling the first cold fingers of understanding creep up my spine. She had not just shown up randomly. She had been watching, waiting. She knew exactly what equipment I had brought, which meant she had access to surveillance capabilities that went far beyond what any homeowners association should possess. I went back inside and booted up my spectrum analyzer. The readings that came back made my blood run cold. The desert was supposed to be silent. Instead, my equipment detected a web of high-frequency signals crisscrossing the entire area. Directional transmitters, cellular intercepts, a surveillance network sophisticated enough to make some federal agencies jealous. This was not a standard HOA with overzealous rules about lawn height. This was something else entirely. The knock on my door came an hour later. Not from Meredith this time. This visitor was different. He was old, probably late 70s, with skin like leather left out in the sun for decades. He wore work clothes that had seen actual work, a sharp contrast to the designer suit I had encountered earlier. Behind him, down the ridge, I could see a battered Airstream trailer that looked like it had been parked in the same spot since before I was born. "Name is Silas," he said, not extending his hand. "Saw that woman visit you. Figured you might want some context before she comes back with her lawyers." I invited him in, made coffee, listened. She did not annex this land legally, Silas explained, spitting tobacco juice into a cup I had provided for the purpose. The man who owned this place before you was named Garrett Huxley. Smart man. Too smart. He built systems in that basement that could intercept half the communications in the county. When the feds finally caught up with him, Meredith saw an opportunity. What kind of opportunity? Silas looked at me with eyes that had seen too much and said too little for too many years. This house sits on a geographic sweet spot. High ground, clear sight lines, minimal electromagnetic interference. Huxley used it to run an extortion operation, bugged the smart homes of wealthy people, recorded their secrets, made them pay. And Meredith? She was one of his customers, had him record her competitors, business rivals, anyone who might threaten her position. When he went to prison, she needed access to his servers to delete the evidence of her own involvement. But the marshals seized the property before she could get in. I felt pieces clicking together in my mind. She bought surrounding properties, formed the HOA, tried to annex this land through legal manipulation. But the previous owner's estate was tied up in federal proceedings until they auctioned it off to me. Silas nodded slowly. You are standing between that woman and the only evidence that can destroy her. She will not stop until she gets what she needs, or until you are gone. After Silas left, I went down to the basement. The server racks were still there, dusty but intact. The marshals had seized the hard drives as evidence, but the infrastructure remained, including something Silas probably did not know about. A fiber optic cable running through a conduit in the floor. I traced it with a flashlight, following its path through the concrete foundation. It ran east, toward Heritage Hills, toward Meredith. Garrett Huxley had not just been running a surveillance operation from this house. He had been running it through this house. The fiber line meant he could route signals without them ever touching the public internet. Complete privacy. Complete deniability. And Meredith had been using that same line to spy on her own neighbors for years. The sonic assault began at 4:17 a.m. I know the exact time because I was running a calibration test on my equipment when the frequency shifted from silent to unbearable. It was not loud in the conventional sense. No one standing on the road would have heard anything. But inside my house it felt like someone had driven an ice pick through my temple. A high-frequency directional sound weapon, the kind developed for crowd control, pointed directly at my bedroom window. I had two choices. I could complain, which would require admitting I could hear frequencies that normal people could not detect, or I could suffer in silence until I lost my mind. I chose a third option. I retrieved my laser vibrometer from its case and aimed it at the exterior of the building where the sound seemed to originate. The device measured the microscopic vibrations on the surface of my window glass and converted them into a visual waveform. I recorded everything. Then I put on noise-canceling headphones, took 2 aspirin, and waited for dawn. Meredith was at the property line by 7:30 a.m. She had brought reinforcements this time. A man in his 40s with a buzz cut and a polo shirt embroidered with the words Heritage Hills Compliance stood beside her, holding a clipboard and wearing the expression of someone who genuinely enjoyed ruining people's mornings. Good morning, Mr. Thorne. She did not use my first name because she did not know it. No one did. I hope you slept well. I walked toward them, keeping my movements slow and deliberate. The compliance officer shifted his weight, clearly expecting a confrontation. He would not get one. Not the kind he was expecting. The sonic emitter you activated last night violates FCC Regulation 15, I said calmly. Unauthorized transmission of directed acoustic energy in a residential zone. I want it deactivated immediately. Meredith's smile did not waver. I do not know what you are talking about. Garrick, do you hear anything? The compliance officer shook his head. The neighborhood has been quiet all night, ma'am. Perhaps you are experiencing medical issues, Meredith continued, her voice dripping with false concern. Tinnitus is common among people under stress. Mentally unstable residents are a liability concern for our community. I may need to file a wellness check request with the county. The threat was clear. If I pushed back, she would have me declared mentally unfit, probably have me institutionalized long enough to gain access to my property through emergency conservatorship. I said nothing. I turned and walked back to my house. Behind me, I heard Garrick laugh. They thought they had won that round. They had no idea I was just gathering data. The next 3 days followed a pattern. Every morning, new violation notices appeared on my door. Unauthorized vehicle modifications, improper waste disposal, failure to maintain landscaping standards. Each fine was larger than the last, accumulating toward a total that would eventually trigger a property lien. Every night, the sonic weapon is activated at random intervals. 2 a.m., 4 a.m., once at 11:45 p.m. just as I was falling asleep. They were trying to break me through sleep deprivation and financial pressure, but they made a mistake. They assumed I was just an ordinary citizen, someone who would eventually buckle under the weight of their harassment. On day 5, I made a phone call. The number I dialed was not in any directory. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "This is Director Castellan." "Sir, it is Thorne. I need a favor." Silence on the line for a moment. Then, "I thought you were retired." I thought I was too. "But I have a situation that involves compromised infrastructure and possible federal crimes. I need access to archived intercept records from the Huxley case." More silence. The Huxley case was closed. Evidence is sealed. "I understand. But someone has been using his network for years after his arrest. Someone with county connections and a lot to lose. I think I am standing in the middle of her operation." When Director Castellan spoke again, his voice was different. "Careful. Send me what you have. Use the secure channel." I spent the next 6 hours compiling everything. Frequency logs, vibration recordings, property documents showing the suspicious boundary adjustment that had supposedly annexed my land. Financial records connecting Meredith Vane to shell companies that had purchased properties throughout the region. The picture that emerged was uglier than I had expected. Meredith had not just been using Huxley's surveillance network to spy on her neighbors. She had been using it to facilitate corruption at a scale that would make most white-collar criminals blush. Bribes to county zoning officials, kickbacks from contractors who built the McMansions of Heritage Hills, blackmail of local politicians who might have otherwise blocked her development projects. And all of it flowed through the fiber optic cable buried beneath my basement floor. The knock came just after sunset on day 6. I opened my door to find Garrick and 2 men I did not recognize. They were not wearing Heritage Hills polo shirts. They were wearing the kind of unmarked tactical gear that private security contractors prefer. "HOA emergency inspection," Garrick announced. "We have received reports of a gas leak on this property." I did not move from the doorway. This house has no gas lines. Everything runs on solar and propane, and the propane tank is external. Garrick's smile was the smile of a man who did not care about truth or lies, only about completing his assignment. "We will need to verify that ourselves. Step aside." I did not step aside. The 3 of them exchanged glances. That was when Meredith's Mercedes pulled into my driveway. She stepped out, still wearing that immaculate light blue suit despite the dust and heat, and walked toward us like she was arriving at a board meeting where the outcome had already been decided. "Mr. Thorne." Her voice was silk wrapped around steel. "I had hoped we could reach an understanding before things became unpleasant. I am prepared to make you a generous offer. Sell me this property. I will wipe your outstanding fines. You can walk away with a profit. And if I refuse, then I will have the county condemn this building by Friday. Structural concerns, environmental hazards, I know the right people. You will lose everything, and I will acquire the property at auction for pennies." I looked at her, at Garrick, at the two security contractors who were clearly prepared to enter my home by force if necessary. Then I smiled. It was the smile of a man who had spent 15 years in rooms where the stakes were measured in lives, not dollars. The smile of someone who had prepared for exactly this moment. I reached into my pocket. The fabric rustled. Meredith's eyes tracked the movement, uncertainty flickering across her face for the first time. "You can send your inspection team inside," I said quietly. "But you should know that everything that happens in this house is being recorded. Every word, every action, every digital signature from every device your people are carrying." I pulled out a small device and held it up so she could see the screen. It displayed a waveform analysis of the local electromagnetic spectrum, with 4 distinct signatures highlighted in red. "Your phone," I continued, "Garrick's tablet, and the 2 earpieces your security contractors are wearing. I have been recording all 4 feeds for the past 6 minutes." Meredith's face went pale. "Delete that. Now." I slipped the device back into my pocket. "I do not think I will. Have a pleasant evening, Meredith. I will see you soon." I stepped back inside and closed the door. Through the window, I watched her stand there for a long moment, calculating, recalculating, trying to figure out what I knew and how much danger she was actually in. Then she turned and walked back to her Mercedes. The engine started. The headlights swept across my property as she pulled away. I exhaled slowly and felt my hands trembling slightly. The bluff had worked, but it was only a bluff. I had recorded their devices, yes, but the data was fragmentary, incomplete, not enough to build a case, not enough to stop whatever she was planning next. I needed more. I needed her to make a mistake, and I needed to be ready when she did. The next 48 hours became a chess match played in frequencies and silence. I did not leave my property. I did not need to. Everything I required was already in place, and the pieces were moving exactly as I had anticipated. Director Castellan's response came through the secure channel at 2:14 a.m. The file he sent was heavily redacted, black bars covering names and dates that some classification committee had deemed too sensitive for even a former operative to see. But what remained was enough. Garrett Huxley had not been working alone. His surveillance network had been funded by an outside investor, someone who had provided the capital for the fiber optic infrastructure in exchange for exclusive access to the intelligence it gathered. The investor's name was redacted, but the shell company used to funnel the payments was not. Meridian Vista Holdings, the same company that had purchased the first 7 properties in what would eventually become Heritage Hills. Meredith Vane was not just a customer of the surveillance network. She was its silent partner. She had built her entire empire on blackmail and stolen secrets, using Huxley as her technical arm while she handled the business side. When he got caught, she had simply waited for the opportunity to clean up the evidence. I had that opportunity. Or rather, I was supposed to be the final obstacle before she could erase everything. The fiber optic cable in my basement was not just a data conduit. It was the original trunk line, the backbone of the entire system. Without access to it, Meredith could not purge the archived recordings that Huxley had stored on distributed servers throughout the network. Servers that still held evidence of her crimes. I spent the rest of the night mapping the system. The cable ran from my basement to a junction point somewhere beneath the Heritage Hills Community Center, then branched out to individual homes like the nervous system of some vast electronic organism. Every smart doorbell, every security camera, every voice-activated assistant in the neighborhood was potentially compromised. Meredith had been listening to her neighbors for years. Their arguments, their secrets, their vulnerabilities, and she had used that information to maintain absolute control over her little kingdom. By dawn, I had a plan. I would not attack her directly. Direct confrontation was what she expected, what she had prepared for. Instead, I would give her exactly what she wanted. I would appear to surrender, and when she came to claim her prize, I would let her destroy herself. The email I sent at 7:15 a.m. was carefully crafted to sound like defeat. Mrs. Vane, I have reconsidered my position. The stress of this situation is affecting my health, and I do not wish to continue this conflict. I am prepared to discuss selling the property. Please meet me Saturday morning to finalize terms. I only ask that you cease the noise disturbances so I can get some rest before our meeting. Her response came within 20 minutes. Agreeable. I will arrive at 9 a.m. Please have all relevant documents prepared. The trap was set. I spent the next 3 days preparing the battlefield. The basement server room became my command center. I rewired Huxley's old equipment, not to spy on anyone, but to create the most sophisticated recording environment I had ever built. Every surface in my living room was calibrated to capture sound with forensic precision. I installed backup power systems, redundant storage, and a dead man's switch that would automatically transmit everything to a secure federal server if I failed to enter a code every 15 minutes. Silas visited on Thursday evening. He stood in my living room, looking at the equipment I had installed, and let out a low whistle. You are not planning to sell this place, he said. It was not a question. No. I am planning to end this. He nodded slowly, his weathered face unreadable. What do you need from me? Just one thing. If everything goes wrong on Saturday, if I end up arrested or worse, I need you to make a phone call. There was a man I worked with in Chicago. He will know what to do with the evidence. Silas took the number I offered and tucked it into his shirt pocket. You know she's going to bring backup. Probably those security contractors. Maybe worse. I know. And you know she is not planning to actually buy this house. She is planning to take it. I know that too. He looked at me for a long moment, something like respect flickering in his eyes. You have done this kind of thing before. Not exactly, but close enough. After he left, I sat alone in the darkness, listening to the silence I had come here seeking. It was still there, beneath the hum of my equipment, beneath the distant whisper of wind through the canyon. The silence was patient. It would outlast all of us. Friday brought an unexpected complication. Around 3 in the afternoon, a county vehicle pulled up to my property. The man who stepped out wore a badge that identified him as a building inspector, but something about his demeanor told me he was not here for a routine visit. Mr. Thorne, I am here to conduct an emergency structural assessment. We have received reports of foundation instability. From whom? He glanced at his clipboard, avoiding my eyes. Anonymous complaint. Standard procedure requires immediate inspection. I let him in. I had no choice. Refusing would give Meredith the excuse she needed to accelerate her timeline. So I watched as he walked through my house, taking photographs, making notes, paying particular attention to the basement door. "This area seems structurally sound," he admitted after 30 minutes of increasingly desperate searching. "I will file my report Monday morning." But as he was leaving, he paused at the door. "Off the record? Someone very important wants you gone. I do not know what you did to make an enemy of Meredith Vane, but you should consider cutting your losses." I appreciated his honesty, even if I could not follow his advice. Saturday morning arrived under a sky the color of copper, the desert sun already brutal by 8 a.m. I had been awake since 4, running final checks on every piece of equipment, rehearsing scenarios in my mind. The dead man's switch was active. The recording systems were operational. My tablet, ruggedized for fieldwork, was fully charged and synced to every sensor in the house. At 8:45, the first vehicle appeared on the horizon. Meredith's black Mercedes, followed by a silver sedan I recognized as belonging to her lawyer. Behind them came a white pickup truck with Heritage Hills compliance stenciled on the door. They pulled into my driveway in formation, like a convoy arriving to accept a surrender. Meredith stepped out first, her light blue suit immaculate as always, her expression radiating the confidence of someone who believed they had already won. Her lawyer emerged from the sedan, carrying a briefcase thick with documents. Garrick and 2 other men exited the pickup, their posture suggesting they were prepared for more than just a paperwork exchange. I met them on the porch. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne?" Meredith's smile was the smile of a predator who had cornered prey. "I trust you have the property documents ready." "Inside." I stepped back and gestured toward the door. "We can discuss terms in the living room." They filed in, all 5 of them, filling my small house with the weight of their collective arrogance. I watched Meredith's eyes scan the room, cataloging the equipment, the cables, the blinking lights of systems she did not understand. For just a moment, uncertainty flickered across her face. "What is all this?" she asked. Security measures. I have had some concerns about unwanted visitors lately." Her smile returned, sharper than before. "Well, you will not need them after today." The lawyer opened his briefcase and began spreading documents across my coffee table. Bill of sale. Transfer of deed. A release form absolving Meredith and the HOA of any liability for past disputes. The paperwork was comprehensive, designed to ensure I could never come back with legal claims. I pretended to review each document carefully, buying time, waiting for the moment I knew was coming. It came at 9:17 a.m. The sound of sirens split the morning air. Through my window, I saw 3 patrol cars racing up the gravel road, lights flashing, kicking up clouds of dust that obscured the desert landscape. Meredith turned to me, and her expression had transformed completely. Gone was the predatory smile. In its place was a mask of theatrical terror. She ran to the door, threw it open, and screamed at the approaching vehicles. "Officers! Thank goodness you are here! He has a gun! He threatened to kill me! Please help!" I stood frozen as the patrol cars skidded to a stop. Deputy Miller was the first one out, his hand already on his weapon. 2 other officers flanked him, their faces tight with the tension of responding to an armed threat call. Meredith stumbled toward them, her performance flawless. She had been practicing this moment, I realized. Every gesture, every tremor in her voice had been rehearsed. "He said he would bury me in the basement." She pointed at me with a shaking hand. "He has been recording us illegally. He is mentally unstable."
Deputy Miller advanced toward my porch, his partner circling to cut off any escape route. "Sir, I need you to step outside with your hands visible. Now." I raised my hands slowly and stepped off the porch. "Officer, there is no weapon. This woman has been harassing me for weeks. She orchestrated this call to steal my property." Meredith pulled out her phone, her fingers trembling with false fear. "I have proof. He sent me a voice message threatening my life." She pressed play. The audio that emerged from her phone was my voice, distorted, stitched together from fragments of our previous conversations. "If you come back here," the recording growled, "I will bury you in the basement." The officers exchanged glances. Deputy Miller's hand moved closer to his holster. "That audio is fabricated," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the adrenaline flooding my system. "It has been spliced together from multiple sources. If you analyze the waveform, you will see discontinuities in the background noise and pitch variations that indicate digital manipulation." I reached slowly toward my pocket, where my tablet was stored. "He is going for a weapon," Meredith screamed. Deputy Miller did not wait for clarification. He lunged forward, grabbed my arm, and twisted it behind my back. The tablet I had been reaching for clattered to the porch, its screen cracking against the wooden boards. "If you are still here, you know that the quietest people are often the most dangerous when pushed. If you are ready to see arrogance meet competence, hit that like button and let us trigger the algorithm like a tripwire." I did not resist as they forced me face down onto the hood of the nearest patrol car. The metal was hot from the desert sun, burning through my shirt. Handcuffs clicked around my wrists, cold and tight. From my position, I could see Meredith smoothing down her suit, adjusting her expression from terror to satisfied vindication. Behind her, Garrick was already moving toward my house, clearly planning to enter under the guise of a safety sweep. This was the moment of defeat. The moment where everything I had built, everything I had prepared, seemed to crumble into dust. My equipment was inside. My evidence was inside. And in minutes, they would destroy all of it. I closed my eyes and took a breath. Then I spoke. "Officer." My voice was rough but controlled. "Check the timestamps. Not on my device, on hers." Deputy Miller paused. "What?" "The audio she played has no background noise, no ambient sound at all. That is because it was recorded in a studio environment and spliced together from multiple sources. But if you access the original file on her phone, you will find metadata showing it was created yesterday afternoon, hours after she claims I sent it." Meredith's face went pale. "That is ridiculous. He is trying to confuse you." I continued, my cheek still pressed against the hot metal. "My security system is linked to a dead man's switch. If I do not enter a code every 15 minutes, everything I have recorded over the past 2 weeks automatically uploads to the FBI field office in Chicago. You arrest me, that file goes public in 30 seconds, and then you become accessories to federal witness tampering." Silence fell over the scene. Deputy Miller looked at his partner. They both looked at Meredith, whose mask of confidence was cracking like dried mud in the sun. I pressed harder. "The audio she played does not match the acoustic signature of any room in my house, but it does match the acoustic signature of her office at the Heritage Hills Community Center. I know because I have recordings of that room from the fiber optic surveillance system she has been operating illegally for the past 6 years." Deputy Miller straightened slowly. His hand moved away from his weapon. "Ma'am," he said to Meredith, "I am going to need to see your phone." You have no right to search my property without a warrant. I am not searching for anything. I am asking you to voluntarily provide evidence that supports your complaint. If the audio is legitimate, you have nothing to worry about." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled to breaking point. "Play the original file," I said. "The one you created. And listen for the wind chimes. Your wind chimes. The ones hanging on your porch right now." As if on cue, a gust of desert wind swept through the property, and from somewhere in the distance toward Heritage Hills came the faint musical sound of metal tubes striking against each other. Deputy Miller walked to Meredith and extended his hand. The phone. Now. Her composure shattered completely. She stepped backward, clutching the device to her chest. "This is harassment. I am the victim here. That man is dangerous." But her voice had lost its conviction. The other officers were looking at her differently now, with the skeptical gaze of people who had been lied to and were only just realizing it. I spoke again, still pinned to the patrol car but somehow in control of the situation. "There is something else, officer. My tablet. The one that fell when you restrained me. It is voice-activated. Tell it to play file vein _confession _master." Deputy Miller looked at the cracked tablet lying on my porch. He walked over, crouched down, and spoke clearly. "Play file vein _confession _master." The speaker crackled. The screen flickered. And then Meredith's voice filled the air, clear and unmistakable. "The police are the escort." Her recorded voice was calm, businesslike, the voice of someone giving instructions they expected to be followed. "Burn the servers the moment he is in custody. If the deputy asks about evidence, the gun is in the planter. I put it there myself this morning." Deputy Miller stood slowly. His hand moved to his radio. "Dispatch, this is Miller. I need backup at the Thorne property. We have a possible evidence tampering situation." Then he walked to the large ceramic planter beside my porch steps. He crouched down, brushed aside the decorative gravel, and pulled out a pistol with no serial numbers. Meredith made a sound that was half gasp and half moan. Her knees buckled, and she sat down hard in the dust, her light blue suit instantly ruined by the red desert earth. Deputy Miller turned to face her. His expression had gone cold and professional. "Meredith Vane, you are under arrest for filing a false police report, planting evidence and conspiracy to commit fraud. You have the right to remain silent." The handcuffs came off my wrists and went onto hers. The click of metal was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. Garrick tried to run. He made it maybe 20 feet before the second officer tackled him to the ground. The lawyer simply stood there, briefcase still in hand, looking like a man who had just watched his entire career evaporate in the space of 3 minutes. I sat on my porch steps and watched as they loaded Meredith into the back of a patrol car. Her perfect hair was disheveled. Her suit was covered in dirt. Her eyes, when they met mine through the window, held nothing but hollow disbelief. "You cannot do this," she said, her voice muffled through the glass. "I have connections. I have lawyers. I have evidence against everyone in this county." I walked over to the car and leaned close to the window. "You can fake a police report, Meredith, but you cannot fake the acoustic signature of a felony." Her face contorted with rage, but whatever she tried to say was lost as the patrol car pulled away, carrying her toward a future she had never imagined. The aftermath unfolded over the following weeks, like dominoes falling in slow motion. The FBI field office in Chicago received my dead man's switch transmission, not because I was arrested, but because I sent it manually once the immediate crisis was resolved. Director Castellan made some phone calls. Federal agents arrived within 72 hours. They found everything. The fiber optic network beneath Heritage Hills was more extensive than even I had realized. Meredith had been running surveillance on over 40 homes, collecting secrets, building leverage files on everyone from local politicians to business owners to ordinary families whose only crime was buying property in her development. She had recordings of a county commissioner accepting bribes, a local judge discussing how to fix a custody case for a friend, 3 different affairs that she had used as blackmail material to ensure zoning approvals and favorable treatment from municipal authorities. The investigation expanded like ripples from a stone dropped in still water. The county commissioner resigned. The judge was suspended pending a state ethics inquiry. Garrick flipped on his employer within days of his arrest, providing testimony that would eventually add federal conspiracy charges to Meredith's growing list of legal problems. I watched the news coverage from my porch, sipping coffee as reporters described the downfall of a woman they called the Queen of Heritage Hills. They used phrases like massive corruption schemes and years of illegal surveillance and extensive network of compromised officials. They interviewed former neighbors who spoke about the strange feeling that someone was always watching, listening, waiting. Silas came by on the 3rd day, carrying a bottle of whiskey that looked older than both of us combined. "Heard the feds found recordings going back almost 8 years, he said, settling into the chair beside me. "Half the county government is lawyering up." I nodded. She built her entire empire on stolen information. Every deal she made, every property she acquired, every person she controlled. It all traces back to that surveillance network. And now? Now the network is being dismantled. The fiber optic lines are being documented as evidence and then removed. Every smart device in Heritage Hills is being examined for tampering. People are finally safe in their own homes. Silas poured 2 glasses and handed me one. "What about you? What happens to the man who brought down the Queen?" I looked out at the desert, at the ridge where his airstream sat like a loyal sentinel, at the vast expanse of nothing that had drawn me here in the first place. "I stay," I said. "I bought this property for silence. Now I finally have it." He raised his glass. "To silence. To silence." We drank as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that no photograph could capture. The air was still. The surveillance equipment was gone. For the first time since I arrived, the desert felt truly empty, truly peaceful. Meredith Vane's trial began 4 months later. I testified on the 2nd day, explaining the technical details of her surveillance network, the acoustic analysis that had exposed her fabricated evidence, the dead man's switch that had preserved everything for federal prosecutors. Her lawyer tried to paint me as a paranoid former government employee with a vendetta. The prosecutor simply played the recordings, recording after recording of Meredith giving orders, making threats, orchestrating the systematic invasion of privacy that had been her primary tool of control. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 23 years in federal prison. Garrick received 8 years for his cooperation. The lawyer, who claimed he had no knowledge of his client's criminal activities, was disbarred and faced his own charges for accessory after the fact. Heritage Hills Homeowners Association was dissolved by unanimous vote of the remaining residents. Some of them had been Meredith's victims without ever knowing it. Others had been her accomplices, benefiting from the information she provided while pretending not to know where it came from. All of them were forced to reckon with the truth of what had been happening in their perfect neighborhood. The houses did not change. The lawns remained immaculate. The property values, after an initial dip following the scandal, actually increased as buyers sought out a community that had been cleansed of corruption. But something fundamental had shifted. The surveillance gone. The fear was gone. People could finally speak freely in their own homes. I returned to my property and resumed the life I had originally planned. Quiet mornings with coffee on the porch. Afternoons spent maintaining the equipment that had once saved me and now served only to monitor the natural sounds of the desert. Evenings watching the stars emerge over the canyon, their light undimmed by the glow of a city I had left behind years ago. Silas visited regularly, bringing news from town and the occasional bottle of something aged and excellent. We spoke about weather and wildlife and the slow rhythm of desert life. We never spoke about Meredith Vane. Some victories do not need to be celebrated. They simply need to be lived. On the 1-year anniversary of her arrest, I received a letter. It came through official channels, forwarded by the federal prosecutor who had handled the case. The envelope bore the return address of a federal correctional facility in Arizona. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in handwriting I did not recognize. Mr. Thorne, I have had a year to think about what happened. A year to understand how thoroughly I miscalculated. You were never the obstacle I thought you were. You were the consequence I had been avoiding for decades. I built my life on the belief that information was power, that knowing secrets made me invincible. I never considered that someone might know more than I did. You did not defeat me with money or connections or brute force. You defeated me with patience and precision, and the simple truth that lies cannot survive acoustic analysis. I do not expect forgiveness. I simply wanted you to know that I finally understand. In the end, the signal always reveals the source. Meredith Vane. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in a drawer with other documents from a life I rarely revisited. The desert stretched before me as I stepped onto my porch. The same view I had fallen in love with the day I first arrived. The silence was complete now, undisturbed by hidden frequencies or directed sound weapons or the electronic hum of a surveillance network built on greed. She wanted to control the signal. She forgot that you cannot filter out the truth when the volume is turned all the way up. I settled into my chair, closed my eyes, and listened to the silence I had finally earned. If seeing that amateur audio splice get destroyed by forensic precision gave you chills, hit subscribe, because the truth is always louder than the noise. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one you should fear the most.
Thanks for staying to the end. Don't forget to like and subscribe to IS Stories.